Hi, my name is Andrea Palotto. I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner. I teach online movement for wellness lessons, and this particular lesson is the intro to my new series, Acture versus Posture. Acture meaning how we move, and posture meaning how we are when we stand, so without movement. I believe that actor is way more important and gives us a lot more information on how we move. So this series is all about finding out how we move and how we can move easier. So the first lesson is an intro to hopping. So the series will work through hopping, and we're just gonna just lightly hop one leg, two legs. From time to time, we'll be switching, and this first lesson is really the introduction. And one thing to note about hopping is that I'm going to use some terminology that's very important for you for this to know for this lesson. So I'm going to talk about failing or flopping the knee. And specifically, what I mean by that is just to let go. So there's a difference between just flopping the knee and bringing the knee down or bending the knee. And I'm gonna have my wife and assistant come over here to demonstrate what that means. So over here you can see her knees, and I'm gonna talk about um, as if somebody comes from behind and just lightly pushes the back of your knee. It makes this kind of flop, kind of flops. It kind of fails. So just lightly pushing that. That's what we're going to work on. So can you show me the difference between flopping the knee and bending it? So here we have flopping. Oh, sorry. Here we have flopping. And then here we have bending. So there's a difference, and we're going to talk more about that. But flopping, you feel the weight come more onto your heel, and bending, you feel the weight come more onto your toes. So that's really the difference, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this lesson. So so this is the intro to my series, and my series is on Wednesdays from 3 o'clock to 4, and it starts the 3 o'clock EDT, so Montreal, New York, Toronto time. And they are, it's starting, the first lesson is starting this Wednesday, so Wednesday, the 27th of October, 2021. And at 3 to 4 p.m. So if you really enjoyed this lesson and you really benefited from it, I really recommend that you join the lessons. They are $82 Canadian for 6 lessons, so 6 weeks in a row. And we're going to really explore this movement, and we're going to really find ways to let go of all of the muscular tensions that are in the legs. So, muscular tension in the hip joints, muscular tension in the knees, and muscular tension around the ankles, which is really important to the way that we walk. So you'll find that by the end of the 6 weeks that you will be walking completely differently, and that just means that you learned a lot and that you really benefited. So enjoy the lesson and remember about the difference between flopping and bending. And maybe you might not get it at the beginning, but I'm sure that if you really just pay attention, that you will find the difference. So enjoy. Hi everyone. We're gonna start, and people will come in gradually. It's usually what happens. Ah, there we go. Um, Today this is an intro class to my series called Acture versus Posture. The question that everyone's been wondering, I guess, is what acture is, because it's not really a term in the dictionary. It means, so posture is, we usually have an image. The back looks like this, the legs look like that, the arm and the chest look like this, the head looks like that. It's all really precise. Whereas acture talks about action. It comes from the word action. It comes from movement. And if you look at, the way people stand, and if you look at graphs that show the position of the feet, you'll see that people are constantly in movement. We're always fluctuating. Whether we're sitting, we're standing, or we're lying, we're always moving in a way. So it's, through my perspective, it's more interesting to look at acture and to look at how we move, since we're always moving. And so this lesson is, like I said, it's an intro to the series, and it's going to be around hopping, and it's going to be very, very fun. So I'm seeing everyone is sitting, which is interesting. So take a moment just to feel how you are in sitting, because posture is also oftentimes, you know, we talk about sitting, our posture in sitting. So just see how you're sitting now. See your hip joints. Are your knees touching the floor? Are you more forward? Are you more backwards? Are you more in the left? You don't need to do that with your eyes. It's really your feeling inside. What do you feel inside? And you can close your eyes. And now come up to standing. Yeah, and you're gonna need some space around you. Yeah. And take out the things in your pockets. They might cause additional weight you don't need. Okay. So now another little test. So when I say hop, I'm talking about very small. The way we want to enter into Feldenkrais, the way that this your experience is going to be is dictated by how you do the lesson. So if you do it very hard, you might be in pain afterwards. But if you do it very soft and very small, and just what you can, and not any more of that, then you're gonna start to feel. You might feel different, and you'll most likely learn and change. So now just gently start to hop as if you lift your heels from the ground just a little bit, and just hop really lightly on both heels. Just hop really lightly. You don't have to bend your knees. You don't have to, yeah, just hop. Your knees can bend if you want, but you don't need to bend your knees. Just see. Yeah, just one little hop. One little hop. You don't need to go super high. You don't need to, it's not a jump. You don't need to go super high. Just see. So this is the beginning. And now see how many times before you get tired and you need a break, see how many times you can hop. Like do it in repetition, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Just see how many times you can do that before you need to stop, and just count. Before you need to take a little break.
Yeah, and now just keep one leg on the floor and keep your left leg on the floor and hop only on your right. Keep your left leg on the floor. Keep it on the floor and just hop. It means you're not hopping big. You're not doing big hops. You're not doing big hops. Yeah, and just count the number of hops you can do. Just count. And at any point you take a break. And then change legs. Doesn't have to be high. It doesn't have to be high. It does not have to be high. It could really be that the front of your foot just stays on the floor. It doesn't have to be high. Yeah. Okay. So now come to lie on your back. We're not going to stay long on the back, so you don't have to point the camera. This is going to be a lesson where we go back and forth from standing to lying. So now on your back, just gently start to feel what you feel on the floor. And I'm going to introduce at the same time as the hopping, I'm going to introduce a kind of breathing that is really, really simple. And the way you can access this breathing is through not being stressed out. So the kind of breathing that we're going to do throughout this lesson is a breathing that is very, very small and slow, and it doesn't make that much movement in you. That means your belly doesn't increase a lot, your chest doesn't get bigger. It's really as if you were breathing, but very, very small. Very small. It doesn't mean that you stop breathing, but it just means, can the air just come in and go out without you making big movements? Just see, it's a question, not a demand. It's a question. How would that feel? What did that feel like? And so now, come back up to standing. We're going to do this often, laying and standing. So just get used to that right now. Going to come to standing very often. And now in standing, maybe not be on a mat. Be on the floor so that you don't... if it's a yoga mat, it's not as bad, but if it's like a moving mat, it might be slippery for the hops. You might not feel like you're actually safe to do that. So now, in standing, think again about this breath that I mentioned. So a breath that is not hard. It just comes in and there's not big movements. Just see what that could feel like, what that could be like. No, not necessary to do it with a force or get mad at yourself if you don't achieve it. It's just really gentle. And now remember I talked about flopping, so now try to flop the knees so that they come forward, and you just let them go. So you don't bend. You just let your knees flop as if somebody is just pushing your knees from behind. And if you have a friend there, you can even ask them, can I have that feeling? Can you take your hand and push me from behind the knee? You can ask a friend there, see if that happens. And some definite ways of feeling this would be to notice where the weight comes onto your feet. If the weight comes onto the front of your feet, then you're most likely bending. But if the weight comes onto the heels, so the back of the feet, then you're flopping. You're flopping. We also talk about failing the knees. They fail. They just let go. Yeah, they just let go. They just let go. Yeah. And notice what happens to your pelvis when they let go. Notice what direction your pelvis goes into. And if you're looking at the camera, don't look. Have your eyes closed, hey? This is an interior, not an exterior. Interior. And if you need to turn away from the camera, then turn away so you don't look. Very important not to look, because it's not about other people. It's about you. And everyone is in their own individual experience. So are you feeling the weight coming onto your heels when you are letting your knees go? Do you feel your chest also just letting go? You can just let go of your chest. Your chest doesn't need to do anything in this movement. So you can just let it go. It's almost as if it rounds, kind of. And see if all this time you've been able to stay with this breathing that is not intense. It is just inside. The breath comes in, the breath goes out. Breath just comes in and out. It doesn't do anything in particular. Just see. And now just walk around a little bit. Take a little walking break. Just walk. Just walk around a little bit. A couple steps. And now come back to standing and continue again to flop the knees. Continue both knees, just let them flop. And see, what do you need to do? What could you do? Or rather, not what you need to do, but what can you let go of? What can you pay attention to make the flopping go lower? What can you pay attention to make the flopping go lower? What do you need to let go of? Maybe your head is doing something, your eyes. Where are you looking at? Are you focused on one thing, even if your eyes are closed? Are you doing something in your arms? Maybe your arms, they can just be hanging on your shoulder blades, on your shoulders. Yeah. Maybe that did something for you. That did something. Yeah, that's nice. Your arms, they're just hanging. Yeah, just flop. And always see, are you coming onto the heels or the toes? So you're standing and you're just letting the knees flop. You're just letting them fail. And then you come back. And you're letting your chest be really loose. It doesn't hold. Doesn't need to do anything to experience the flop. And now when you flop, bring your head forward and look up. And see if what that does. Do you think that's part of the movement, or is that oppositional? While you flop and then come back. Yeah. It's confusing, isn't it? Everyone's confused. So now don't do that and let the head just go. Yeah. We got some heads that are just falling. That's nice. Yeah, okay. Go walk around. Actually, yeah, take a couple of steps and then come to lay down on the floor a second. Take a rest. For people who have done Feldenkrais, standing lessons are always ones that we go, oh, really? Is that necessary? But they don't have to be so bad. They don't have to be so bad. And now when resting, you're on the floor. Pay attention to your breathing. How are you breathing? And see if you can do the breathing that we mentioned before, of just letting the air come in and just letting the air go out. And for people who have done a lot of breathing lessons with me, you can see if you can reconnect to those breathing lessons where we did just really simple and easy breathing. And there doesn't have to be a lot of movement. There doesn't have to. It doesn't mean that it doesn't move, because it is a movement. Breathing is moving. But it doesn't mean that you have to expand the whole chest super humongous. I like to say Super Megatron 3000. It's a running joke with some of my students. And just a note that if you have your camera on, I can see you and I can guide you more through your movements. It might mean that you have a pleasurable, more educational experience. You might learn and change easier because you have someone's perspective. And so now, before you come up, make sure that when you come up, you can keep this breathing small, minimal, easy breathing. So start to get up and keep this minimal breathing. Keep this minimal breathing. Is that possible? Is that possible? And then when you're up, I'll give everyone some time to get up slowly. And when you're up, have your legs spread a little bit, not super wide, but just spread easily. And put your weight, so both legs are going to be standing the whole time. Both legs are touching the floor, but you put the weight onto your right heel. So you just move yourself so that the weight of yourself comes onto your right heel. And then gently, 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 with your left still on the floor, you start to just lift your foot while keeping the heel on the floor and keeping the weight on your right heel. You just lift the front of the foot, lifting the front of the foot. Your legs don't need to be super wide. Find,
Sorry, lift which foot?
you lift the right, but you don't lift the foot, right? You lift the front of the foot. You keep the heel, yeah, you keep the heel on the floor.
Thank you.
You keep the heel on the floor and you just lift the front of the foot. You lift the front of the foot. And your left leg stays on the floor. Your left foot stays on the floor as well. It doesn't lift. See if you're doing a lot with your toes. See if you're holding your breath super intense. If your eyes are really squinty. If your jaw is loose. Your shoulders are still hanging from your shoulder girdle, still hanging, and just see, lift it and then bring it down to the floor. Lift it and bring it down to the floor. You don't have to bring it high, just lifting it, just lifting it. That's all. And then when you want, you take a little break. Yeah, take a little break. And then come back easily. Take a little break. In Feldenkrais, the more often we take a break and the second that we need it, the faster the break, the shorter the break can last. So if we wait till the moment where we're super tired, we're going to need a bigger break. So, and I can't know when each and every person needs a break. We all need breaks at different moments, which is why it's important to self-regulate for yourself, right? Taking your break when you need it. So keep on with the same thing. The weight is on the right heel, the foot. The front of the right foot lifts up, the left stays on the floor. And just notice if you use your toes. Notice what happens to your hip joint. Where does your hip joint go in space? Your right hip joint. Does it come forward? That's slightly impossible. But does it go backwards? That's more plausible. It goes backwards a little bit. Can you feel that? You feel how your hip joint on the right side, your right hip joint, it comes backwards while you bring up your foot. But you don't transfer your weight. You don't transfer your weight. You keep the weight on the right. It's different, yeah. You can transfer the weight, but you're not doing the same thing, yeah. And now when you have your weight still on the right foot, you'll feel that your hip joint comes backwards. And see if you're staring at one particular thing. My wife is staring at me. Yeah, see if you're staring or if you're clenching, you're holding your arms. They can just be loose. And now come onto your back. Lay down a second. Just a second. And feel maybe there's something new in what you're feeling on the floor, maybe your lower back. Your lower back, your shoulder blades. Maybe you feel your legs are longer, or one leg is longer. Maybe there's a difference between the right leg and the left leg. And then still with keeping this breath, really easy breath, come back up to standing. Is it a feat to come up to standing? Is it a lot? And now put the weight on your left heel. And do the same thing. The weight on the left heel. And gently just lift up your left foot. Keeping the weight on your left heel. Keeping the weight on your left heel. Your right leg, it can just be neutral. It doesn't have to hold anything. It doesn't have to do anything in particular. It can just be there. Your arms, they can just, they can just be right next to you. Your fingers can just be loose. Your eyes, they don't have to do anything special. Your chest, your arms are hanging. Just lift up your foot. See if your toes, they can lift up without super intenseness. Yeah. Do you feel your left hip joint on this side? What's the difference between before and now? And see if what your head is doing. If you're leaning a lot, your whole body is leaning, or maybe you're just leaning your leg. Your whole body doesn't need to be turned and side bending to the left. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. And your other leg, the knee can be bent a little bit. It can be floppy. It doesn't flop necessarily, but it doesn't have to be locked into place. Okay, take a walk. See if it feels different to walk. And then come back. Come back to standing. And I didn't mention this before, but look down on your feet and standing and see if they're parallel to each other. Or is there one that's more turned out? One that's a little bit more to the right, a little bit more to the left? Is it parallel to your knees? And now see if you can have them parallel and think about the outside edges being parallel to each other. And now Have your weight shifted onto your right, into your right heel, your right leg, and now just flop the right leg. Just flop the right knee. Yeah, just flop the right knee. Just flop the right knee. Yeah, but you don't need to turn. You don't need to do a whole turn. You can just flop. Yeah, you can just flop. You don't need to turn. Yeah. And just flop. Just flop that one. And the other leg, can the other leg just be easy as well? Can it just be gentle? Doesn't need to do anything in particular. And feel in this way, doing this, flopping, where does your hip joint go? Where can you imagine your hip joint? It's a ball. And it's just inside your pelvis. Well, not inside, but if you think about the whole the muscles and everything, it's along the line of the pelvis. And just see, flopping the leg, where, and is the weight coming onto your right heel? Or is it coming onto your left? Try and see if you can get it to come onto your right. And see again if you can let your chest kind of flop as well. It kind of flops as well, and it rounds a little bit. It rounds, it rounds, it rounds a little bit. And the weight stays on the right. And your head, it can come lower. And now come to rest. Come to rest on your back. Let's see if there's a difference between your left leg and your right leg. See if there's some newness, something interesting, a different feeling in your lower back, or even in your upper back. Your shoulder blades, your arms and your neck. If you were letting go of them in standing, were you able to transfer that into lying? Or when you are lying and you're not doing anything with your chest, are you able to transfer that and have that experience in standing and moving? And now come to standing. Yeah, I like this, coming to standing easily. And in standing now, do the same thing, but on the left. So bring your weight onto the left leg, onto the heel. See if you can feel it on the heel. Remember how flopping the knee, to know if you're flopping or if you're bending. To know if you're flopping or bending, it's the difference between bending and the weight comes onto your front of your foot, and flopping, the weight comes onto your heel. And something happens in your pelvis. Your pelvis goes backwards. Your pelvis goes backwards. And see if, again, your arms, they're hanging. They're just hanging. They're not doing anything in your chest, your lower back. It can round a little bit. It doesn't have to round completely, but it can round a little bit. It rounds. And your jaw is loose and your breathing is small but deep. Small but deep. That's very possible. Small and deep, and it doesn't move everything. It doesn't have to, you don't have to do anything extra. Okay, walk around a little bit. Walk around. How has walking changed since the beginning? And then when you come back, now start to flop once the right and then once the left. Once the right, once the left. And then just do that. But you don't have to do it fast. You don't have to do it fast. And now with this extra thing that you need to do, see if you can always remain with this interior awareness of what's going on. See if still the weight comes onto the heel on the side that is flopping, and then see if you can, and then you have to transfer the weight from one leg to the other. So you have to do that whole transfer, right? But there doesn't need to be any extra turning or whatever like that. You can just put the weight. You don't have to turn to put weight. You can just put weight. There's a shifting, but it's not a huge turn. And then if you want, you can try to do it a little bit faster. Only if you want. If you don't want, then don't do that. Only if you want. Only if it seems comfortable. And now, doing once the right and once the left, you can really see the difference between both. Do you feel the hip joint in both? Do you feel that your chest can just hang in both? Okay, now come onto the floor and rest. And check in with your breathing. The state of your length on the floor. And what is the length of your legs? The length of your arms? And now come up to standing again. Always standing. Not all the lessons will be will always be doing this. Some. Come to standing. And now shift the weight onto your right leg. And then again, just a couple times, really easily, lift the front of your right foot, keeping the weight on your right leg. Your left leg, it can just be there. It doesn't have to do anything special. It doesn't have to be tight. And just lift the front of your right foot. And then do that a couple times. And then when you're ready, keep it in the air and imagine that there's a clock that's standing right in front of your foot. And your toe, your big toe, is touching one of the hands of the clock. And you wanted to push it clockwise with your toe. You wanted to push the hand of the clock, the dial of the clock, all the way around. And the clock, let me tell you, this is the greasiest clock that has ever existed. It's not a rusty clock. It's smooth and gentle. But your effort determines that. And so, always with the gentle breathing, right? Gentle breathing, don't hold your breath. Don't squint your eyes. Let your teeth in your jaw be gentle. And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be big, yeah. And let your head go, that's nice, yeah. And let your chest go. And see if the clock and moving your foot also does something in your hip joint. Just notice. Just notice. And take breaks when you need. Bring your foot down when you need. But just notice. And see if see at what point your hip joint comes backwards. And always notice if there are places where you go fast, or maybe it's not a circle actually. But if you go slow and you go small and you do it easy, you can maybe see all the numbers. And then take a rest, and standing you can walk around a little bit again. Don't go too hard. Yeah. And now come back with your left leg, and it might be different. Don't give it the same expectations as your right. It might be different. It might be easier. It might be harder. Just see. So now put the weight onto your left leg, onto your heel. Just a couple of times. Lift it up. Bring it up. Your foot keeping your heel on the ground. And keeping your weight on your heel. Just lift it up gently. See if you can have that same ease as the right one. Your shoulders are low, your head. You're not doing anything extra to hold in. Your breath is easy. And then when you're ready, you keep your foot up and you start to turn the dial, but this time counterclockwise. 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 And the clock is the greasiest clock you've ever seen. Doesn't make any squeaky sounds. The dial, it just goes really easy. It goes really easy. And I didn't mention this, but your toe isn't doing the movement. It's your foot. And if anything, it's actually your hip joint. So see if you can feel the turning of the ball of the hip joint while you do this movement. See if at some point the hip joint goes a little bit more back. Sometimes it comes a little bit more forward. Sometimes it is a little bit to the right, and sometimes it's a little bit to the left. And now when you're ready, take a little walking break. And then when you're ready, come back and just stand, and in your imagination, imagine that both feet, you're on both heels of both feet, and then you lift, just in your imagination for this moment, you lift both feet up, you lift both feet and your heels are still on the floor, and then you do the same thing with the clock, but this time on both feet. And the right one is going clockwise and the left one is going counterclockwise at the same time. And just imagine what you would need to do and how you would need to position yourself. What would you need to let rest and not do anything extra to do this movement? And think about, hip joints and how they roll the ball of the hip joint, how that movement of the hip joint and bringing the pelvis backwards but letting the chest hang can really let this movement happen. And if you want, when you're done and you feel that maybe you can do this, you can try. And if you need, you go to a wall and you use the wall just as a little support, not super holding onto the wall for dear life. You use it just for a little support. You can use a desk or whatever, yeah. And see if you can come onto the hip joints, letting both feet come up. And remember, the right one, it goes clockwise, and the left one, it goes counterclockwise. So they're both going out at the same time, and then they're both coming in at the same time. And yeah, use something to just let yourself feel. But think about what you need to do in the pelvis, what you need to do in the knees. Your knees, they don't have to be locked. Do it a couple times, then you can walk around and then do it again. Delicious. You can make it slower at some points. You can make it faster at some points. And you can even feel, is there a transfer of weight on one side of the foot? When you go outside, maybe you feel more of one part of the heel, and when you go inside, you feel another. And maybe you can see if they're doing different things at one point. And now come to lay on your back. And now on your back, again, what is your length? Your lower back, your chest. And then when you're ready, come up to standing. And then when you're in standing, have your legs parallel again like before, and flop both of the knees at the same time. Let's see if it's become easier. Just flop, just flop, just flop, just flop, just flop. That's nice. Notice what happens. Your pelvis goes backwards, your hip joints go backwards, your chest is just hanging. It's just hanging. Your head is hanging. Maybe you're looking towards the horizon. And then you can flop one right, one left, one right, one left. Always making sure that the weight comes onto the one that flops. Go slow enough so you know 100% sure that the weight comes onto the one that flops. I did this 100 times and I went fast and I didn't realize that when I flopped my left leg, the weight was coming onto my right. I did it 100 times. So really see if you can see where does the weight go. And now walk around, and at any point in your walking, just start to do the hopping like from the beginning and see if it's different. See if maybe you can hop for longer. And remember, it doesn't need to be higher. It doesn't need to be faster. Just see whatever it is that you want to do. And see if the failing of the knees, the flopping of the knees helps to hop. Yeah. Do you need your chest? Do you need to hold your head? Do you need to hold the floor with your feet? And go boom, 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 boom. You don't need to, yeah, just boom, 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 and make a lot of noise downstairs. Just for 2 seconds. Yeah. You don't need to do anything. Let go of your chest. There you go. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. It looks way easy. People are really into it. Yeah, let go of that head. Let go of that head. Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice. And walk around, and that's the end of the lesson. If you're interested in continuing the series, it's going to be really interesting. We're going to do a lot more of finding the weight on your on each leg. We're going to work with more of the flopping of the knees. We're going to do this amazing lesson that's really, for me, was a huge change in terms of finding weight on my legs. So there's 6 classes. They're all happening on Wednesday afternoons at 3 o'clock, and it's $82 for the 6 classes. They're all going to be on Zoom, and if you miss a class, then I will send you the recording the week of. This way you can stay with us during the whole series.